So good morning also from me, ladies and gentlemen. Can everybody hear me quite well, or is this too low? So everybody hears, okay? Good. In case my voice gets too low, please give me a sign. I'm happy to welcome you here today to this breakout session on the topic of welcoming refugee students on campus in Germany. So this slot focuses, on the contrary to most of the other slots, on welcoming refugee students and not scholars who have already a degree. Some words to my person. My name is Kracht. I work for the German Academic Exchange Service in Bonn, and we implemented a department to administrate various programs that help to integrate refugee students into academic studies in Germany. And I would like to give you a presentation on what we set up so far, what we achieved, the challenges that we are still facing, and afterwards two colleagues from German universities will give you a short insight into the really hands-on experience at the universities with these programs. So what we implemented was developed in 2015 when we received a large number of refugees in Germany, and we asked ourselves which support could be given in the academic sector to live up to the big potential that these refugees also bring to the country. So DAAD set up a model to integrate these refugees into the German universities. This is what you see here. And then, together with the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, we set up programs within this model for the different phases to ideally prepare refugees who can study in a degree course in Germany. And for these three phases, the Federal Ministry provided 100 million euro until the year 2019. So the special challenge at the beginning was that there was data missing about the educational background of the persons that had arrived in Germany. So we didn't know how many refugees were actually able to study. And based on various surveys and estimates, DAAD expected at least 30,000 to 50,000 refugees to be able to start or continue an academic degree in Germany. So I would like to briefly point out the different phases that we set up. Phase one, the refugees bring different competences and qualifications, of course. So the first step is to recognize those potentials. And at an early stage, we want to provide them with the ability to study and to have the sufficient language proficiency to start a degree course. Then in phase two, this is one of the main focuses on these programs is called the Integra Program, which supports the German universities by handing them funds to be able to set up language courses for the German language, and courses to learn the technical knowledge that is maybe still missing to start a regular degree course in Germany. Here we focus on not only on universities, but also on preparatory colleges, of course. Then in phase three, we have the program Welcome, which is the second big program in this model. It is supporting student initiatives in Germany, because when refugees arrived, lots of student initiatives came up at the German universities, and we want to achieve that those are more stabilized and professionalized by funding student organizers at the universities. And those initiatives are very varied. They help refugees to integrate in the university, to understand the academic system in Germany. We have the so-called refugee law clinics who give legal advice of any kind. So, and by the end of last year, 2017, we published a study which you can see here and which is also available downstairs at the stall of DAAD. This is an analysis of the development of these measures that I just introduced to you, And this data was collected between January and December 2016 as part of the Integra Program. It is for the first time a presentation of evidence-based findings on the target group, which consists of the refugees qualified to study and interested in studying. It can also be accessed online on this website that you see below. I would like to give you some figures of the Integra Program, which you can also find in this publication. So what have we achieved so far? Currently, 166 institutions, that means universities and preparatory colleges, from all federal states of Germany participate in the Integra Program. Over 6,800 refugees participated in an Integra course in 2016, and 1 year after, in 2017, even over 10,400 refugees participated in the program to prepare for academic studies. This, of course, shows the strongly rising need of this academic preparation. So, almost 13,000 refugees participated in language and subject-related courses so far. And an even higher number, which is 45,000 refugees, seeked for advice and mentoring at universities. The main topics during the mentoring are mostly financial issues during the studies, so how to finance the student life, and the recognition of certificates and prior learning. In total, over 21 refugees applied for a course, and about half of them received a spot. The main reasons for the rejection of the participation were either that the qualification was not good enough actually, or that the available funds were not high enough. I would like to give you some information on the background and the qualification of the group that we are speaking about. In this slide, you see that the participants of the Integra courses come from 60 countries of origin in total, and Syria is the strongest with 78%, followed by Afghanistan with 6%, Iran with 5%, and Iraq with 3%. Yes, and of course in the year 2015 and 16, in Germany in general, the biggest group of refugees arrived from Syria, which is also mirrored in this data. And also to be pointed out is that the Integra participants who came to Germany from Syria or Iran have a comparatively high level of prior education. Here you see some figures on the countries depending on the gender, and the clear majority of the Integra participants are male with 81%, but this differs a bit by country of origin. Iran shows a comparatively high amount of female course participants with 33%, and refugees from Iran have actually the highest level of education. Women have even more often already studied at a university than men there. When we look at the female refugees, in general, in the relevant age group that we are speaking about, only 1/4 of the applicants for asylum came from women. Surveys also show that refugee women have a lower educational level than men. This makes the 19% female course participants seem reasonable. On average, the Integra course participants are 27 years old, and also 26% of them are even over 30 years old. And this, of course, brings also different needs in comparison to, let's say, a regular international student who is usually younger. For example, the topic of childcare has to be considered, but it also brings different opportunities because these students have already bigger pre-knowledge and experience. This slide deals with the topic of the residence status, and important to point out is that refugees can participate in the Integra courses or enroll into university in Germany independent of their asylum status. And this is because the asylum procedures take sometimes months or up to a year or more, and refugees shall be given the opportunity to meanwhile, without losing time, prepare for a degree course or to start one. As you can see on the slide, the numbers of 2017 show that this option actually benefits a big group. 20% of the Integra course participants still were in an ongoing asylum process. Thanks to the program being independent from this status, they could already visit these courses. The numbers also show that the number of residence permits rose since 2016. Here's some words to the prior knowledge of the group we are speaking about. Almost 50% have already studied in their home countries. That means, in detail, 20% have studied at university and 22 had already even a first degree from their home country. And this also explains a bit why the age is comparatively high in this group. So here we see which type of course the refugee students are interested in. And in total, 1,000 courses were offered within the Integra program last year. And it is striking that the majority of the visited courses is language courses. This shows, of course, that language is the first and biggest barrier that they have to overcome when they want to enter a degree course in Germany. And if we have a look at the subject-related courses, they focus on the topics of engineering, natural science, and medicine. This is quite the same as for international students in general. And to slowly conclude, I would, at the end, show you some figures of the program Welcome, which, as we remember, supports the student initiatives at the universities. Here we have 159 universities participating all over Germany. And in last year, we had over 500 student initiatives participating, with over 1,000 students voluntarily being engaged to support refugees. And it is especially nice to see that about 100 of them have even a refugee background themselves, which shows that there is already a group of people kind of empowering themselves to become from a help receiver to a help giver for the kind of next generation. In total, roughly we can say that about 33,000 refugees took part in some kind of welcome initiative and profited from this. In the last year, for the first time, the ministry and DAAD had the Welcome Prize for student initiatives because we wanted to honor their big engagement and to show the variety of work that they do at the universities. And here you can see a picture of the meeting in Berlin in the ministry. And yeah, the winners were the Refugee Law Clinic of the HU Berlin, then an initiative that supports refugee students to learn German of the TU Dresden, and the initiative Refugees Helping Refugees of the University of Siegen. And we made some short film clips of those where they are presenting their work, and I would like to show you just one short one so you can have an insight of the work they do.
Flüchtlinge haben in Deutschland Hilfe erhalten, doch viele wollen nicht nur Hilfe nehmen, sondern sie wollen etwas zurückgeben. Sie wollen ihre eigenen Ziele verwirklichen, aber auch der Gesellschaft in Deutschland wieder was zurückgeben von dem, was sie an Hilfe bekommen haben. Und das merkt man eben ganz besonders auch bei den Mitarbeitern, die selbst als Flüchtlinge ins Land gekommen sind und eben jetzt sagen, wir wollen unseren Landsleuten helfen, hier in Deutschland Fuß zu fassen.
Da ich selber Flüchtlinge bin, kenne ich sehr gut die Bedürfnisse von Flüchtlingen. Ich kann zwischen die Kulturen sehr gut vermitteln und auch sie dabei unterstützen und als Vorbild wirken. Die Unabhängigkeit finde ich ganz wichtig für Flüchtlinge, damit die sich in der Gesellschaft und in den Hochschulsystem zu integrieren, damit sie in der Gesellschaft mitwirken.
Ich helfe Flüchtlingen beim Deutschlernen, zum Beispiel Grammatik oder Leseflächen sind große Herausforderungen von Flüchtlingen. Ich war auch hier im Universität Siegen DSH-Kurs gemacht und ja.
Der DAAD ist natürlich wichtig für die Vernetzung der einzelnen Initiativen der verschiedenen Hochschulen. Er ist ja der Träger einmal der Fortbildungsprogramme, auch jetzt im Bereich der Flüchtlingsunterstützung, und er ist natürlich insgesamt der Projektträger letztlich für das Projekt Welcome.
Wir helfen bei der Entwicklung von der Sprachsoftware Cumulat. Die Sprachsoftware wird später in die Schulen eingesetzt. Dadurch können die Flüchtlinge, die keine Möglichkeit haben, im Deutschkurs teilzunehmen, die Sprachsoftware benutzen. Wir veranstalten zurzeit in Kooperation mit Welcome hoffentlich Fußballspiele. Die Sport ist die beste Möglichkeit für die Integration. Wir versuchen immer nicht nur so einen Verein allein von den Flüchtlingen zu machen, wir versuchen die Leute mit den Deutschen zu mischen. Und finde ich, die Sport ist die beste Möglichkeit dafür.
Ich mag die Arbeit, weil ich Menschen helfen kann, besonders Menschen, die Ziele im Leben haben. Sie wollen Deutsch lernen und danach vielleicht in der Uni studieren oder arbeiten gehen. Ich glaube, die Geflüchteten haben schon viel erlebt. Deswegen, wenn wir ihnen helfen, dann sind sie auch selbstständig. Dann können sie auch in ihrem Leben was erreichen. Und wenn wir da sind, Menschen, die auch das gemacht haben, was sie jetzt machen, dann kriegen sie von uns Hilfe. Dann wissen sie auch, dass egal wie schief es geht, gibt es jemanden, der da für sie ist.
Ich glaube, dieses Projekt kann als Blaupause dienen, die auf andere internationale Studierende übertragen werden kann.
Okay, so this is just to give you a short insight of what they actually do. And I think this program is also really important to support all the initiatives that we support, all the courses that Integra sets up, and the Welcome project just rounds it up. Well, so this is what we have achieved so far, where we are standing today. We are, of course, facing some challenges. The topic of financing studies always comes up. Then, of course, now the first refugee students are actually starting a degree course. They have finished their preparation, they have achieved their German language skills, and now the question is, how can we guide them through their studies to achieve that they will also successfully conclude their courses. And then, of course, the question of transition into the job market, how can we support there, which could be the tasks of the German universities, of us supporting this. Yeah, and this is the challenges that we are facing from now on. Well, now you have heard the theoretical background, and I'm happy that two colleagues are here. We have Frau Xenia Muth from Bard College Berlin and Dr. Anim Heinemann from University Bayreuth, and they will give you an insight of how they deal with these programs, with this topic of integrating the refugee students at their universities. Which one of you is first? Kann ich dir helfen? Ist okay.
Hello, everybody. I first of all would like to thank the DAAD scholars at Risk and FU and the Alexander von Humboldt Stiftung for staging this event and for giving us the time to talk about our experiences and most importantly about our students as well. I am here from Bard College Berlin, where I work with students on full scholarships from countries from crisis regions, and I also coordinate the Welcome DAAD grant that is that's run through our Civic Engagement Office. And I actually would like to start with one of our students and give her a voice for a few seconds.
I'm not a student there anymore. 3 months later, my dad got arrested from Damascus, and it was me, my mother, and my youngest sister, Irina, and we fled to Turkey. One of us had to work because we needed money, and we knew no one, and we didn't get like any help from anyone. For 3 years, I worked in Turkey with a radio station, and then with a newspaper, and then with a website as an editor and a reporter. At the beginning, I was working for something like 16, 17 hours. We didn't really have time to even to feel the absence of my father. So the thing is that in Syria, I always had the hope that it's fine, I will just continue my studies again at some point. But in Turkey, it felt like that's it. This is how my life gonna be for the rest of my life. I decided with help of my sister to apply to Bayreuth College, Berlin.
So this is Wafa. Wafa is one of our Syrian students who had to give up her bachelor degree in journalism and media to flee from her home country, Syria. And now she is currently in her second year in the humanities bachelor degree with us at Bayreuth College Berlin on full scholarship. She is one of the first students from Syria that we accepted on a scholarship in the program called Program for International Education and Social Change. That started 2 years ago, providing students full scholarships for their undergraduate degrees. Right now we have 16 students, and as of this fall, in the next academic year, we will have 30 students in total in that program. So these 30 students will be enrolled in one of the 2 degrees that we offer at Bayreuth College Berlin. One of them is the degree in Humanities, the Arts, and Social Thought, which concentrates on philosophy, literature, and arts. And the second one is Economics and Politics. Bayreuth College Berlin is a private, non-profit liberal arts university where classes are taught in English. So this in itself makes it easier for students to enter an undergraduate degree because it's in English. We don't require German from the beginning, so students take German classes as they do their BA degree. The bachelor degrees are recognized in both United States and Germany, so students usually graduate with a double degree. The 30 students that will join us, or that are partly there and will join us in the fall, are joining a student body of 260 students in total from around 60 different countries. So students or so-called refugee students are not special on this campus. They're not different. They're just part of an international student body, and they're international students like everybody else. But these 30 students are part of the program called Program for International Education and Social Change, as I mentioned, and that is a scholarship program that Bayreuth College Berlin runs for students from crisis regions. It covers scholarship, the scholarship covers tuition, as well as it may cover expenses for room and board and study expenses if no other funds are available for the students. The design and the goal of the program is to provide students with no less than a bachelor degree to indeed cause the long-lasting, substantial change in their lives and for their professional future as well. But how do we do that? How did Wafa get into an English-speaking or an English language bachelor degree in humanities in the international student body in Berlin? What were our tasks, or still are our tasks and challenges as an institution to support Wafa and students like her with the forced migration background? I think I would name 3 main areas that we as a university had more work to do with. First of all, it's fundraising for the scholarships to provide students with a realistic chance to study full-time and to have the means for attending university full-time. Second, finding the right students. That means finding the right students for a liberal arts education, for liberal arts degrees in humanities, as well as finding students with required paperwork for university entry in Germany. And third, supporting students once they enroll. So that means supporting them upon their arrival in Berlin, or to adjust for them to the academic environment, into the English-speaking language academic courses. And all of these 3 points we manage with first and foremost partnerships. And one of the partnerships is the DAAD Welcome Program that we participate in. As a liberal arts college, we are committed to student engagement and their commitment to active citizenship. So we as an institution took on the task to work on academic possibilities for students in terms of scholarships, but also our students themselves were very active when the so-called refugee crisis happened in Berlin. So they organized for the neighborhood, for the refugee camps around the university, which is in Pankow in northern Berlin. They organized regular sessions where they welcomed neighbors, refugee participants, but also students from campus to get together to exchange campus resources, languages, as well as just cultural activities. That project was called Open Campus Against Closed Borders. And with assistance of the DAAD grant, this project really turned into a substantial support for students with forced migration background. So specifically, I would say three major activities that we support and that we are able to run with this with the support by the DAAD. Is first of all, we run weekly sessions on campus, open sessions for everybody that are called campus conversations. So they are open to the public, to the neighborhood, to refugee participants, as well as BART students, where they can come together and freely and equally exchange opinions and learn languages, and it's among peers. So it's equally important that first of all, students from Bard College Berlin who are native speakers teach German and supervise conversation activities. But also other participants are welcome to introduce ideas, to contribute topics to the sessions. The sessions also offer different programs, discussions of current political events, film screenings, workshops on skill development such as academic writing, CV writing, application writing. It's also a great way to address refugees in the area, but also in Berlin, who are interested in getting to know students, getting to know the academic environment, but also applying for our scholarships and our projects and programs. Second, we were able to strengthen the support for new students who would enter our BA degrees with students with refugee background. For example, first of all, current students serve as peer mentors in the application process and in the arrival process. They help with general questions. For example, as a German-American institution, we use a very extensive application process with recommendation letters and motivation statements and essay writing. So current students as peer mentors can assist with that process and explain to students what that means to write a motivation letter. Once enrolled, they have usually special questions about this, for instance, the change into the student status, such as they have, especially in Germany, changed their student health insurance status. They communicate with the job center to change their status there as well with public benefits. And that is something that current students really can help with. And here, during the application process, another tool that we use as well is the onset language test in English that we use as an opportunity to avoid the TOEFL or IELTS fees for those students who can't afford them. And then as a third activity or as a third support that is possible with the DAAD Welcome Grant is the very different academic and language backgrounds of students. They really need time to adjust to the academic courses in English, to also the intensity of academic courses in general. So what we are able to do is to fund student tutors who would offer sessions, regular counseling hours on essay writing, English, and German language as well. And as Julia mentioned before, some of these students are second-year students as well as first-year students, and they are serving as these peer mentors already for the new incoming students. So these are a few examples of needs that emerge, except of just merely putting students into academic placements at universities. And I think the DAAD grant is a great example as well of how quick changes can be made possible and affect the higher education and really the student placements and address these needs that come up for the students. At this point, I would like to finish again with Wafa and let her have the last word. But I think my last point is that we all agree probably that it's really important to use opportunities to improve and to improve access to higher education. Because what is important is really academic thinking and the development of the students, not obstacles such as missing papers or language levels. So the DAAD program really helped.
At the beginning, I felt like a Pokemon. I was even too scared to say anything in the class. I was too scared that they are gonna ask me to say my name, and I would have a heart attack if I have to say my name. And then the classes started and it got really better. Also, like, teachers were so helpful. Like, they motivated me because they felt that, and they keep telling me that it's not about the language, it's about the thoughts. And you have the good thinking, you just need to say it.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for my two previous co-presenters. This was very impressive, what's been done, and it's very important that we have two completely different kinds of higher education institutions here. I'm coming from the University of Bayreuth, a small research-focused university in the north of Bavaria. We're collaborating very intensively with DAAD in many, many ways, not only in Welcome and Integra, but also in research in Germany as the gate towards the world. 2 weeks ago, I had the pleasure to be part of the German-Australian InnoHealth delegation in Melbourne and Sydney with the DAAD. And when you look on the whole spectrum of the DAAD funding as the biggest scholarship organization in the world, then it's particularly impressive that we have such a quick answer to the influx of refugees. As I said, Bayreuth is in the northern of Bavaria. We are a young research university, very much focused also on being a civic responsible university and cooperating with many partners worldwide, mostly in research, and many of the refugees actually came not only from Syria but also from former partner universities, or still partner universities but not operating partner universities at the moment, and that helped us to connect to these refugees very often. Very often they came from scholars, their teachers, whom we happen to know, whom we worked with previously, and that also helped when some of the refugees lost their papers along the way, and we could somehow identify them via these partnership channels. We launched our program in spring 2015, and of course it had two main pillars in Bayreuth, so we called it Refugees Welcome, and one were, of course, as mentioned, German language courses, and then intercultural and academic prep courses. So we immediately matched it with prep courses, disciplinary prep courses, because we saw it as a very important element of the preparation to enter a study program. In one case, we even had someone who would then qualify immediately for a PhD program. But then, again, as a university that offers 500 courses, 500 classes in English, more than 25 degree programs on the graduate level in English, we extended this first pillar also almost immediately to English courses. So we offered the choice between German and English courses for refugees, depending on which study program they would want to pursue. And this also proved to be very productive. Then, of course, the second thing was the support of student initiatives. We have a very active student body on campus, very often involving international students and also students with a migration or even refugee background, and we try to integrate them as the colleagues in Siegen did. So that is, I think, from the information I have from many other universities, a very common practice to include these students. We do this in the regular welcome services as well. Of course, every destination has its specific challenges. We are a university in a relatively small town in an otherwise rural area. We're going to come back to this later. And of course, then the society, I would put it very politely, is not as prepared for a strong influx of refugees as it would be in a metropolitan and very vibrant city as Berlin. However, we managed to establish very early support, and as we partner with our local authorities, not only the immigration authorities but others, we managed to eliminate administrative hurdles quite quickly. So we launched the preparatory classes, and we clustered the support and had a whole new unit running in my department in the international office by autumn 2015 already. So we started some numbers with 28 students. At the beginning it was very difficult because these 28 students were those admitted from 200 applicants. And we tried then to widen the focus, to admit more students to these courses and go away a little bit from the strong criteria of academic eligibility. And that progressed in the year 2016 and 2017. Then, of course, we involved immediately our local students, and then we had several initiatives also popping up on campus in order to support us, and we tried to find a balance. I come back to this later, to somehow steer it, but on the other hand also let it grow and let them pursue their path of activities themselves. So, of course, then Welcome and Integra were launched. Then the support came and we embraced it immediately by joining these two funding schemes and linking our existing activities with new ones. We tried to immediately anchor the contact persons in the infrastructure of the institution. That is very important, so that you can then sustain the infrastructure also beyond the funding period. That is something that is true. I talked about this in a previous session. That is also true for the Philipp Schwarz initiative, in which we participate as well. Then, of course, we promoted creative student projects, and we integrated refugees wherever it's possible, because some had problems with, of course, learning the German language, but they were very proficient in English already and could support us with other activities, interactive and intercultural social activities, for instance. So the Welcome project then, as part of Integra, so I would see it, and supporting Integra, first produced a service point for refugees in the international office. We funded one staff member immediately. This was a young researcher, a PhD student in the intercultural linguistics, so she was very apt also to train students in languages, and we, of course, tried to create synergies between the existing welcoming services that we already had to enable students to study and to enhance the study success of students. And then, of course, we used our student parliament and the International Students Network, which is the local branch of the European Students Network, to support us, and that worked fairly well. Then we started to structure the legal advice for refugees, also with external partners, as mentioned here, law and legal, and then we integrated to add a very creative side to it. The University of Bayreuth, I think, is one of the destinations for African studies in Germany. So we have, over the academic side, beyond the academic side, we have also a Center for African Arts, the biggest contemporary collection of contemporary African paintings. And we tried to bring this together with the refugees in order to interact with artists in residence and get a completely different perspective of one side of the community that you probably would not expect necessarily there. Then some facts and figures. So we, as you can see, we started in 2015 with 28 students, then we had 63, then 56, then 40, and it's still ongoing, and that's a number that I would say wavers around 50 students who are still integrated in these activities on campus. And most of them are successfully entering the study programs in our universities. Some also join other family members in other cities and enter other study programs. That's all definitely fine. We have some challenges. As I said, now I come back to the rural area, because some, of course, of the refugees do actually live in villages. And there's not sufficient transportation, so we had the challenge to bring them, get them to class, bring them back, give them the opportunity also to have additional alternative transportation. They are students in a rural area, very often equipped with their own cars, helped a lot to provide additional transportation. Then, of course, we try to define and harmonize the needs of the target groups within the refugee community. As we said, there are older students, younger students, families, etc. This is also not always easy. That was one challenge. And then, of course, we try to make them visible, which is not always easy because they are older. If someone on campus doesn't know that they are refugees, they consider them to be probably PhD students. 25% of our PhD students are from abroad anyway. So we have to make them visible on one hand, but integrate them on the other. So that was a very interesting challenge on balance. Then the second was to build a sustainable network. So to sustain the awareness and the commitment in a network on and off campus. And then, of course, as I said before, find a balance between steering activities and others to let them just flow. And constantly in discussion also with the university executive board, and it was very important to make it a top strategic priority of the university's executive board to deal with these issues and to, constantly talk to the head of administration and to the executive board about making this infrastructure that we had started, among others, with the help of Integra and Welcome, sustainable. So, what are the outcomes? We have a very good and welcoming global culture on campus that was enhanced and strengthened by these activities. And we had then a lot of international students, also former refugees, volunteering to enter these projects. That was, in some activities, even an almost entrepreneurial culture that emerged, and that was very nice to see. And then, of course, we had a lot of projects that helped build bridges between the university and the community in the city. Then we had, of course, many refugees who were not eligible to enter a university. We interacted with, for instance, the local and regional Chamber of Commerce and tried to get them into an adequate vocational training. And thus we immediately started to interact with other stakeholders in the region and in the city, and made them see that it's also an important topic for them because there is potential workforce coming in, and if they go through the language courses and their vocational training, then this could mean that they benefit from this situation as well. And then, of course, we had the art projects with the African Arts Center. You see a group of students here in the African Arts Center in one of the galleries. And with this, I thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much to my two co-speakers for this insight into your work. For us as DAAD, it's also always interesting to hear what's actually going on, because we are pretty far away. We read the annual report, but of course sometimes we consult you by phone, but it's always interesting to hear what you're actually doing and achieving. So we have half an hour left. I would like to ask you both to come up here with me, and we would like to open for questions from the audience. If you want to discuss anything with us, maybe we have some questions for you. So please feel free to ask.
And we have a large partnership with DAAD. They're extremely great. I'm curious whether the students participating or selected to participate in Welcome and Integra, are they predominantly already in Germany? Or are you also in a position, if you have, since you're already working with some refugees, are they still in touch with people, back in Syria or in Turkey and be able to facilitate others coming in? Or do they have to already have entered?
Yes, these two programs, they focus on refugee students who are already here. There's also programs that support students maybe from Syria with a scholarship, but this is different. These are really for people who made their way here, who are here and ready to start with the university.
And is asylum status in Germany for students and scholars, what does that give them? That's what, I mean, I assume they eventually get that.
I mean, I don't know exactly what you mean. I think they can, regardless of the asylum status, they can attend a preparatory course, a language course. They can also enroll for a degree course. It's the decision of each university, but in general there is no rule that they have to have a certain asylum status. Please.
My name is I'm with the National Union of Students in Norway, and we have currently launched a project on easing the access of refugees into Norwegian higher education. But we have some issues that you haven't treated, so I don't know if you haven't got the same issues in Germany or if you've dealt with it in other ways. But our main problem is the mapping of the competencies of the refugee, which will happen several times. So when they arrive in Norway, they will go to some kind of reception center where they will stay for a couple of months until the asylum process has begun. And then there's the initial mapping of the competencies and what kind of future they could have in Norway. And then when they get their asylum grant or their pass, they will go to a city, municipality, and stay there. And then they'll start with this introduction program with Norwegian and social information about Norwegian life. And the problem is that they will always go to a city with a university or a university college. So that's my first question to you. How do you, where do they arrive, and how do you ensure that the former students can go to a city where you have a university and where they would get a chance to have an academic education? And then the second problem is it takes so long to learn sufficient Norwegian, and also we have a good mix between Norwegian and English, so we will need a sufficient language qualifications in both of these languages to be able to succeed in Norwegian higher education. So we normally have science schools like adult education where they will go and they will not start at the university immediately, but do that later on. So normally they will have, in addition to their fleeing process, it will take several years between they're finishing their studies in their home country and starting their education again in a Norwegian higher education institution. So how do you deal with that as well?
Maybe I start with the language question. Okay. So the things you pointed out, we have those problems too. What you say is absolutely right. Also with the German language, it takes a while until you learn the proficient level to really be able to attend the classes. And then you have also the technical language, so basic German is not enough. And so what we saw is the courses started in 2016, and now slowly the first ones are enrolling. So here it also takes time. What we tried with this Integra program is to bring them into university and learn the language there, because we were hoping that they could already make the connection to the system, to the academic system, and also learn some technical language. This is how we try to solve, but the problem of time is of course there, yes.
I think one of the trouble that we had with there are also German public courses offered, or German courses offered through the German government that students sometimes have to take, sometimes have the opportunity to take for free. The problem with this is that they were only offered until a basic level, and there was a gap between the basic level and then the level you need for university. And I think these courses especially really filled this gap, providing intermediate language courses as well. And for our specific case where we teach in English, that's of course an easy entrance into university where we require students to also learn German, so they would fulfill these requirements in case they need it for the German government during their studies, basically.
So the German university system is very autonomous. So it depends very much on the universities themselves and their specific situation. The University of Bayreuth has a very strong academic tradition in intercultural German studies. So it is one of the universities starting with this back in the 70s already. And that is why we have a couple of institutions which are not on campus, like the Institute of International Communication, which offers intensive language courses all year round for migrants, for refugees, etc. So, and we have a very intensive summer school that is, if need be, an 8 weeks intensive program. So what we do and what we did is to combine all these instruments. And these instruments have already been introduced to the university admission system in the following way. So if a student applies regularly and comes to us, not as a refugee, to enter a study program, and the language proficiency is not sufficient, then this student gets a tentative admission, can start with a study program and has an intensive language training for another 2 semesters, and then the decisive exam arrives, and then we decide whether to fully admit the student or fully enroll the student. That is true for everyone. And we're lucky enough that the federal state of Bavaria, we created a specific funding program for these activities to enhance the study success of international students. So that is what we combined with the refugee activities. So 2 semesters in Integra, then the 2 regular preparatory semesters, also combined with tutorships, specific tutorships, as disciplinary tutorships, but also already with the experience to sit in class and see how it works and to get familiar with a kind of guest listener status, right, a guest student status. And that is how we try to solve this in both languages, in German and in English. And then it also depends on the discipline. So, I don't know if any mathematician is in the room, but we have a lot of mathematicians who say, look, we talk in numbers. And this is the easiest access to a study program. Where students, as you said also with your student Wafa, you see if they have the skills when they start to fill, the blackboard with formulas and numbers, and then you say, okay, you just have to really work on the language because this person has the skills. The PhD student I talked about earlier was a chemist, right? He could prove that very well without, blowing up the lab. That was obvious that the skills were there. So the point is that that it is really very individual with regard to the very person, with regard to the destination, so the higher education institution, and there's no patent solution. We just try to find synergies with everything we have, and I guess in many cases we might be successful, in others we won't probably. To your second question, the mapping of the skills, that is a very interesting one. So you have these destinations where refugees arrive, and then they are sorted into groups with regard to what they tell us. And then we started to work together, as I said, with companies, with chambers of commerce, and so on, to find out whether they have rather skills for vocational training, also depending on their age, and whether they could prove anything with any documents. If we could find out something, we have a very, very strong international alumni network. So many refugees from Iraq or from Africa, from Eritrea, we tracked their records down through our alumni, for instance, who then started to find evidence that they had been enrolled, even if they could not retrieve the very degree documents. So it's a very diverse and complex, I think, operation, the whole thing. Yeah.
I think I know this for Syrian students, that you can look up transcripts in the national database that exists and that works in case they don't have their transcripts. But what is also offered is the test US that can be used for university admission. And we are trying that out this semester, so we'll see how that works. To add to your other part of the question, I agree that it's very individual per student and also per university how to deal with the language abilities. We've also seen that some students come in with perfect English language skills. That for us is important for admission, but then others need support. And what we also do, in addition to writing support or student counseling, is we introduced a writing course, an academic essay writing course that is still based on English as a second language support. So students would perhaps take a few less classes than they should, and then take this class as well to just get their language up to speed during the semester.
Thanks. So I'm also from Bayreuth, Berlin, so I'm going to leave Tanya out of this question for a second, but I'm very interested, Julia and Arne, when you mentioned that students are slowly starting to move from the Integra and in welcome projects into actual degrees, right? So we at Bayreuth were lucky to be able to admit people directly into degrees, but I'm very curious to know, how that's working. Do you have a sense of how many students have actually thus far moved from these programs into an actual degree track, or maybe not just through the DAAD programs, but in Bayreuth in general? And what are those students doing for support for living expenses, travel expenses, books? Like, what are the structures that are being put in place for that transition, if you have them?
So I would say that we have probably between 1/3 and 50% from the first cohort now ready to study, and it depends very much on the study program, because we have study programs which are satisfied if the student somehow reaches a B2 level, let's say, but we have others who demand a C1 level to enter the study program. So that very often is the benchmark that students have somehow to refer to. And then so they enter study programs, they can enter only when they meet these language criteria, and on the undergraduate level. On the graduate level, it's even more complicated, because most of the graduate programs, I would say almost all graduate programs, have specific entrance exams, because one of the university strategies is to enhance quality, and since we're a public university, it's not a revenue-driven business at all. So we really stick to these quality criteria quite strictly, and with admitting this preparatory phase, of course, and a lot of support. But at some point the decision is taken. And then we have specific funding programs for, so supporting programs that would probably support students with enough funding for accommodation, healthcare, and so on. And since many of these students are very active, we managed to at least get a part of them into student assistance positions as well. Try to preferably admit them, try to convince scholars to take them on into student assistance positions, and then this works out as a kind of patchwork funding, I would say. That is, but there's no pattern solution yet. So for the second and third cohort, we're still really trying to find sustainable solutions. Yeah.
I would like to add something general to that. This question of how many refugee students have already enrolled is very difficult because the German universities mostly don't keep track of if somebody who enrolls is a refugee. They don't keep track of the asylum status. You can only say by country of origin, but of course not, because there's also just international students from Syria. So that is very difficult to say. And then your question was also how they finance themselves. We just made a survey amongst the Integra participants of the year 2016, which just ended, and we will publish the results in another publication, in another statistical publication, probably in autumn this year, and it will also deal with this question. So we'll see.
This winter semester, 2017-18, around 3,000 refugees enrolled in a proper program after prepper courses. So this is a 300% increase to the year before. So we can say maybe, although it's not directly linked, that this has been contributed by the DAAD programs, this large increase overall. But the problem is that the universities don't track, or sometimes even if they know the figures about refugee students, they don't disclose to them out of data security reasons. So we can say at least 5,000 refugees are enrolled in study programs throughout Germany. But if you have a look at the official higher education statistics in Germany, you can say that alone from Iran, more than 7,000 students were enrolled last winter into German higher education, and more than 5,000 Syrians were enrolled in proper study programs. So the truth lies somewhere in between. So just to give you a rough estimate.
And maybe to take up this point, it depends. I mean, if you ask for percentages, this depends very much also on the university, because a big comprehensive university like this university here would have probably a lot more refugee students in these programs, and then of course, even if they admit a decent number, the percentage would be still low, probably compared to what we had. And so that's a very relative answer that you always can give.
Hello, good morning, good day. I'm working for the Institute for Auslandsbeziehungen, IFA. We are currently establishing a new protection program which will focus on artists at risk. It's not the same as the program artists at risk, but it's the same idea. No? There are artists in situations who work for human rights issues or others and are threatened. So also they need support. We are establishing the schemes at the moment, processes, criteria, and so on. Network, for example. So, okay, the artists come in the program on visa, a working permit or a stipend. So I'm very interested So after the 2-year period is over, they might return to their home country. Now, this is, of course, one of the aims, but it might not be very realistic in many cases. So what will happen after the, for example, 2-year stipend? You seem to have the same challenges in DAAD, and you might have some experiences already. How this transition can be supported?
I think this is rather a question for the context Philipp Schwarz, I would say. This is probably comparable, and I talked in my previous session about that. So what we do with scholars is that we try to immediately integrate them into other funding schemes. That is, for instance, really research, third-party funded research projects funded by the German Research Foundation or others. From the very beginning, and as a matter of fact, we look at that problem before we even start the hosting. So we look very specifically on a match of, in this case, research profiles of the very person and our research priority areas, and with regard to centers of excellence that we apply for extension or for extended funding to find a position for this person there, just to extend, to buy time, to extend this. And then, as I said before, we try to raise the awareness of the scholars at risk from the very beginning that there is no guarantee whatsoever for any German or an international scholar to get a permanent position in the German as well as Western academic system. So they have to be aware of that. So we try to get the label refugee off their chest as soon as possible, to set free the researcher who tries to be excellent in order to get a position. And we support them with all the services they need, of course, according to our capacity. So if they are well-known scholars but have just published in Turkish or Arabic so far, then we try to translate some of their core publications. We try to connect them, send them to international conferences, to be visible. We try to integrate them into the academic community as sustainably as we can in order to perform, to let them go back, to enhance and their profile. That is the main path that we have taken. And in one case we were very successful with that. In other cases these cases are pending, and we're still trying to find things and connect them to projects or even build projects around them. So if I try to translate this to an artistic context, then I would say you would have to find a way to let them integrate into the artistic community, and let them be aware of the also of the drastic situation that artists have in Berlin. Looking at the rising rents for ateliers, so and that many artists here probably will be not very well funded throughout their lives, and specifically in old age. So they have to become part of the community, and what we can do is to offer them the same chances that all others have. I think they at some point they have to stop in believing to be in any privileged group anymore. You know, they get more support with regard to also dealing with trauma, and this can break in every time a family member gets somehow involved into new conflicts. We know that will continue. So this situation. But with regard to their professional development, I think they have to face the facts and have to try to perform as best as they can on the job market and on the free market. That would be my reading if I should translate this to the artistic context.
We have 5 more minutes, maybe one more question. You were raising your hand for a while.
Oh, thank you. My name is Jeannie. I'm from Australia, from president of our union, a couple of people work in universities. But my interest here is I just wanted to get clear on for students who are refugees, it is up to the university to decide whether to take them on and take them in. And how are they funded?
Yeah, we had this question before with the funding, but could you just repeat once more the organization you're with?
I'm with the National Tertiary Education Union in Australia. It's a trade union, and in Australia we have some extremely difficult problems with getting students into our. Well, actually we have a terribly difficult problem with opening our borders, but we also have a very difficult problem with people who are actually being accepted as refugees, but they're not eligible to enter the universities without paying for international student fee. They're not considered to be local. So I was wondering, what I was interested in was how refugees, potential student is considered alongside a German-born student.
Yeah. So first of all, the main difference, of course, is that we don't charge fees so far. I mean, except for Baden-Württemberg, which has just introduced moderate fees for students beyond Europe, but we don't. So the funding would have to cover living expenses with regard to the minimum amount that the immigration authorities demand to issue a residence permit. And that's about 700 euros. So we try to match this through different funding channels, including including the students in many cases to work themselves as well, right? To a certain limited extent, if we can provide them with 300 euros per month and they get a 400 euro job, then they're fine. You know, they're not very well off and they're not wealthy, but in a moderate lifestyle they can survive and can proceed with their studies. But they don't have to care about fees.
Yeah, then just to add in Australia too, they're not allowed to work.
I'm very familiar with the situation in Australia. Just returned from Melbourne yesterday. Yeah.
As I mentioned, we do charge fees, but for these students specifically, we try to find the scholarships. And for living expenses, again, we try to find scholarships, or students bring sometimes scholarship with them. So a few students are, for instance, funded by the International Institute for International Education for living expenses. Or students, as you mentioned, students receive public government student loans for their education. That depends very much on the residence permit as well. So all of these, and as well as jobs. Most students are allowed to work, or refugees as well.
Okay, we unfortunately have to close here now, but yeah, first I would like to thank you both for contributing to this breakout session and to all of your questions, which was also very interesting for us, I think. If you have any further questions, I will be down in the hall. We have a DAAD stall there with some information material, and you can come up to me and ask, and I bet you too as well. So thank you very much for attending, and enjoy the rest of the conference.